Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing a meta wrap-up for the Monarch Classic Constructed meta. You can see I have pulled up here the fabmeta.net tier list. This is just kind of for display. I'm going to talk about how I feel about it and my thoughts on the meta throughout this video. And we're going to kind of talk about the evolution, right? So Monarch came out in May of 2021, so may feel like a long time ago, especially with Tales of Aria coming out in 2 weeks, but wasn't really that long ago. It was what, 3 months ago? Is that what that is? So maybe more. Math is hard, but I think it's 3 months ago. And yeah, and the meta's changed a lot since then, right? So pretty soon after the Monarch came out, we have the Proquest Auckland, right? In Proquest Auckland, the calling Auckland was Monarch sealed in draft, but the Proquest was classic constructed, right? And we had the winner as a control Katsu deck, piloted and kind of invented in a lot of ways by Winton Bedford. Winton Bedford is still he's pretty active on the ninja section of the Flesh and Blood Discord, so he's always there talking. And yeah, this is how Katsu started out. It was a very control heavy list. The way I see control Katsus, the way I usually notice them is when they're running all 9 flick flacks. He's running all 8 here. He's only running 2 yellows, but when you're running all the flick flacks, usually that means you're control in most scenarios, right? And you know when you're running blues that are just for blocking. Like when I see the 3 blue fluster fists, that's usually a sign of controlled Katsu, right? So this was the beginning of the meta, basically. I think this was like one of the first weekends. This was May 5th and May 6th, so it might have been like the first weekend or two after Monarch released. And this early version of Katsu was able to block out effectively the chains. So Chane took up most of the rest of that meta in that top 8, but the early versions of Chane just couldn't put enough pressure. They were a little slower. You can say this one was running like Dimensional Crossroads, Ninth Blades of the Blood Oath, Springboard Somersaults. It's running Mutated Masses like the full 3. It's just a little slower. 3 Chains of Eminence, right? I guess the Gorganian Tome doesn't really slow it down, but it's a little slower than the chains that we see today. Some would argue a lot slower. I'd say just a little slower, but the slowness that it had to it compared to the current chain made it so that Control Katsu could effectively block it out, right? Which was a problem for chain players. So fast forward to 3 months later, like I said, September 11th here, and you see a much faster chain. A much faster chain. I mean, you can look at the yellows here, right? No Dimensional Crossroads, no Ninth Blades, no Springboard Somersaults. Going full in on 3 Riftbind, 3 Artivore, so either 3 Riftbind, 3 Artivore. They want to do the full Seeds package. This one's running a new kind of package with it's actually running 2 new packages, both in this deck. It's running the Tremor of Arathiel package, which is not a package. It's 3 cards, but or actually no, it runs the blues as well. But it's just some extra damage, which shows you how even more aggro it is, right? It's a 1 for 6 as the red, which is a very aggro rate, but you have to make it go off, which it'll always go off. But it's also running the Flock of the Featherwalkers, which is a package I'll talk about later. That was kind of pioneered by Matt Rogers. It makes the deck able to go a lot wider, which is go wide is the weakness of control decks for most control decks, not every control deck, but the average control deck. I think we'll see it different with Old Him, but the average control deck is weak to go wide in general, and they have their D-Reacts set are usually better against go tall, right? So they went more wide, went a lot more aggro, a lot more streamlined, and just Control Katsu just died basically. Like Control Katsu had like maybe like a 20% win rate against full aggro chain, right? Like I was a Control Katsu player. I got top 4 at my road to nationals with Control Katsu. I lost every chain match I played. Like I got lucky to just dodge chain. I played the same player in Swiss and then in my top 4 match against chain, and I had no shot. Like I had no shot. They just get so much advantage at the end of the game. Control Katsu couldn't compete, right? So we saw a switch. Here I'll show this to a aggro Katsu, which is what we're on now. Running like Heart and Cross Strap. Going with this one's running head jabs. There are a lot of variations of Agrokatsu, and even though the deck's gonna be not really playable after Tales of Aria, it is kind of sad because we never solved it. Like, I don't think there is a best version of Agrokatsu. I don't think there's a best version of a lot of decks, and it's really hard to solve Flesh and Blood because there's not millions of matches being played like on Magic Arena, but it truly was never solved. Like, there is no best Agrokatsu deck. There's like 3 or 4 variations you can play. Anyways, we went full aggro because Chane is not the best at blocking. He's okay at blocking, but he's not, he's no Bravo. And so full aggro Katsu is what is the most popular Katsu currently, as I film this video, and the only one that's very viable in the meta. You see control Katsus do well, but it is an uphill battle for them against Chane. If the Chane players are good, right? Katsu is a bit of a noob stomper deck in general, and it can be good against newer players. It's difficult to know how to block against Katsu is the main thing, but for experienced players on Chane, Katsu is not a big deal. So the main deck, the Boogeyman, was Chane, right? We have the Boogeyman as Chane. At first it was Control Katsu, Chane adapted, and now Chane was the Boogeyman, right? Because even though Katsu adapted back with Aggro Katsu, it's still not like a dominant matchup for a Katsu. I'd say it's like a 50-50, maybe slightly favored for Aggro Katsu, but really it's probably a 50-50 matchup, right? Like Aggro Katsu needs the Chane to get bad banishes, basically. Excuse me. So Chane was the best deck. Chane is still the best deck. Prism, everyone thought was bad. It was bad. It had a really, really bad conversion rate in Road to National events. Like, it would put so many fewer players in top 8s than it should have based on the number that signed up for the event with Prism, right? So it had a bad conversion rate. Turns out, though, full control, complete turtle, running 3 sigil, 3 sink below, 3 fate for scene, just full turtle Prism was the answer to Chane, right? Tyler Horspool, who I will be interviewing this Thursday, which is exciting. I will be interviewing him on this channel. Going to be interviewing him Thursday. Hopefully get it out the same night. I do most of my footage pretty raw, as you can tell. Will be out Thursday, hopefully. And yeah, he invented this deck pretty much. I mean, obviously Prism was around and Aura Prism was around, but he truly committed to the full control package, right? So I'll be talking to him about this deck, but he went 7-1. He played 14 matches, right, to win the event, and he 8 of those 14 matches were against Chane, and he beat 7 of those eight Chanes. So it obviously has a good. I mean, he's a good player. He's a very, very good player, but it has a good Chane matchup, right? So control Prism, and we're at the end of this meta, right? So we don't know if Chane could have adapted back to beat the control Prism because we only have 2 weeks and we don't have any other major events. But as of right now, control Prism is the counter, the most obvious counter to Chane, right? And we don't. That's kind of the end of this meta, right? It's like the end of the book, right? We're opening a new book. We're starting a new book with Tales of Aria. Frostbite tokens are going to change everything. Chane is maybe less viable. Katsu's not viable at all, probably. So yeah, so it's a very different meta. But for this book of Monarch Classic Constructed, it ended up with Prism, full control Prism, being able to beat out the Boogeyman of Chane, and having pretty decent matchups across the board after that. So those are the main decks. I'm going to be talking about a few of the others because obviously that is not all the heroes in the game. But those are the decks that kind of shaped the meta, right? It started out with some Control Katsu, shifted into Chane adapting to go wide and more aggressive to beat Control Katsu. And Control Katsu went to an aggro variant that kind of had a decent play against Chane, but Chane stayed the Boogeyman. And then it came in with Prism, who everyone thought was a bad deck, ended up being full turtle Prism that was able to beat and have a very good win rate against Chane. Okay, let's talk about some of the other good decks. Quickly here, Bravo, probably in the top 3 decks, maybe top 5. He's very good at being average, like slightly above average, right? Like he doesn't have any awful matchups per se. He actually has a pretty bad matchup against Control Prism, funnily enough, because the auras just make it so his one attack he just blanked every turn basically. So yeah, Bravo, solid deck. Rob Siegel. I'm showing a lot of decks from Florida because I'm from the Florida scene and I love our decks and our deck builders. I'm also showing like famous decks, obviously like the Winton Bedford, the Tyler Horspool. But yeah, Rob Siegel, great player from Orlando. He played a lot of Bravo. He was very successful on Bravo. Bravo's a solid deck. It's a deck like if you pick up and you learn, I don't think any meta will make it so you do that bad. I think in the new meta he'll be fine. I think in the old meta he was fine. I think you'll win events on Bravo. You won't have as insane win rates as like Chane will or Control Prism will. And some if you, it's not like you're reading the meta per se. It's just a solid deck. I think similar is Dash. This is my buddy Chris Ray, his deck. He played really great this Rojanat season, and yeah, he won one with Dash here. Dash was also, I'd put her in the same boat as Bravo, kind of middle of the road. She can do some really crazy stuff, and if you're a good player, Dash gets really good. Kind of similar to Bravo. She wasn't like the best deck at any point in this meta. You could argue at certain events maybe she was the best position at that event, but overall Chane was the strongest deck throughout the meta. But Dash had game, and she was a great deck. She did good things. Um, I just wanted to bring this up. This is the Chane deck that Matt Rogers pioneered with Flock of the Featherwalkers to be able to go wide. Makes you a quicken token, so next turn you can start with a go again card and not use a shackle or like Snapdragons or anything, so you get an extra go again. You can use it on a CNC to turn off their D-reacts for that turn. So Flock was just a really, really nice evolution for the Chane deck. I meant to say that earlier, but yeah. We're running a little high on time. We're just gonna go over a few more. My buddy Jimmy Lee from Orlando also, he had a Bolton deck. We have two Bolton decks I'm gonna show real quick. Bolton played a full aggro Raiden and a OTK Saberless. They were both about average. They both did good. I think Bolton has a lot more room to be explored, but I do think he's gonna be hurt pretty bad by Frostbite if he becomes popular. So we'll have to see. And then one of the old standbys of the Classic Constructed meta before Monarch, Dorinthia, just didn't put up as many results as expected. I would still put her in like tier 2. But yeah, Dorinthia just didn't show up in any significant way at any events really. So yeah, so I would put this tier list if I was gonna remake it right now, because I don't know when they last updated this. I would put Chane tier 1 still, top of tier 1. I would put Prism tier 1 since she has, from what seems like at least, really good game against Chane, right? If you're the best deck against the best deck, yeah, then you have a good game, right? So, Prism I would put tier 1. I would bump Katsu down to tier 2 and Dash up to tier 2. So I would have this tier 2 be Katsu, Bravo, Bolton, Dorinthia, and Dash. And then the decks I didn't talk about are these tier 4 decks that I would actually consider tier 3. Like, I would get rid of tier 3 and put Dash up in 2. But yeah, these decks they just don't have the support right now. Viserai might be getting support from the new set, and obviously Azalea is getting support from the new set too. So these heroes might adapt. But Reinar, Kano, and Levy are not getting any new support. Unfortunately, they're probably going to stay down here unless they end up being relevant in that new meta. Unless they end up just having good ways to beat that new meta. But yeah, so for now, that's what I would consider the meta at the end of the Monarch Classic Constructed season. And we are going to be starting Tales of Aria season. I was a Katsu player. I unfortunately have to hop off him. I don't think he's viable. If Lexi's any good, she will just have like a 90% win rate against Katsu. And I will be probably trying all the new heroes out. I'll be making new videos, kind of just talking about the new decks, explaining how I would build them. I said like on this Thursday, and 2 days from when this video comes up, I will be interviewing Tyler Horspool, who won the Calling Las Vegas, and talking about his full turtle control, or whatever you want to call it, Prism deck. And yeah, and then I will also hopefully be making a very early version of a sealed guide before the pre-releases for Tales of Aria. I'm not an amazing player. I think I'm okay, but I still think it'll help out newer players that are going to their first pre-release to understand the drafting experience. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment for what else you'd like to see, and I'll see you next time.